Jessica returns to the group with the manuscript. She says in the final pages it tells us who Mr. Rabbit is. However, those were the pages that she gave to Grant, which he hid. If you remember, Grant got caught at the end of the last episode, so they don't know where they could be. However, Alice saw him hide them, and she brings them to the group. Quickly, they rifle through the pages, and they find out that Mr. Rabbit is called Litan, but that doesn't mean anything to anyone. After 3 further breakouts of Russian flu, panic begins to break out amongst the public, so the vaccine is to be made available tomorrow. However, before it's made available, it needs to be tested. It needs to be an independent test and on a civil servant. So you can guess who the test is going to be on. Jeff tells Michael it's to be him. He's told to go to the warehouse where the vaccine is being kept and have the test. He's told not to question the results, just sign it off. The group continue to study the manuscript pages, and within it, Carville says that Janus is hidden within his greatest achievement. There is also some drawings with loads of numbers on, which appears to be some sort of genetic code, and so they think this is Janus. Becky slips away to meet Donaldson as they had arranged to do the other day. Obviously she doesn't have the manuscript, and when Donaldson finds this out, he throws all the medication into the river. So she's now resigned to the fact that the Deals syndrome within her is likely to develop further. Ian manages to convince Jessica to give him her gun. He goes to Michael's house, who's there with his Eastern European pregnant girlfriend. Well, she becomes very anxious when there's Ian there waving a gun about. So Michael, to try and calm the situation, says he will tell Ian where the warehouse is and where the vaccine's being kept. Whilst Michael is showing a map on his laptop, Anya strikes both of them and they fall to the ground. She then picks up the gun and starts to make a telephone call where she says in a perfect English accent, "I have a situation. I need to speak to control now." Whilst Anya is anxiously waiting on the phone, Michael begins to realise the situation and literally pulls the rug from underneath her feet. She falls over and badly hits her head on the table. When he goes over to see how she is, he realises that she's dead. And so Ian takes a very shaken Michael out of the room. Wilson hacks into GCHQ's databases. He starts to perform a search on all their documents for Litan. It looks like there's nothing there at all until suddenly, in one of the footnotes of one of the documents, Litan is mentioned. This paper is from the Committee of Genetic Discovery, and it has a list of all the attendees there. So they work out that Litan's name has probably been changed on all the documents on the database. However, now they know that Litan, with name changed, is in the list of attendees. They search further, and some of them have already died because it was a long time ago, and some of them were women. But they managed to narrow it down to 7 men. So they blow up the pictures from the committee photo and place them on the wall. Ian arrives back at the house with Michael, obviously not very pleased to see Michael. However, when he sees the pictures of the 7 men up on the wall, he asks, "What's he doing up there?" It turns out to be a young Sir Conran. Meanwhile, in the background, Alice is sat on the floor with all the pages of the manuscript. She has put them together like a puzzle. These pages have formed a shape which they believe to be the Janus molecule. Wilson collates all the knowledge they gained so far and puts it into an email, which he sends to politicians, police forces, scientists, and eager journalists. Jessica and Wilson go after Sir Conran, and they break into his building, whilst the remainder of the group go to the warehouse and Michael tries to get them in. Jessica starts to become a little bit suspicious. They've broken in far too easily. All of a sudden, Wilson grabs her gun and points it at her. He admits to freeing Letts, and also not sending the email because he thinks they're actually right in what they're doing. Sir Conran has been holding Grant prisoner. He got hold of some of his sketches that he did from the manuscript, and one of them is the picture with all the numbers on it. However, it's not quite finished. It's 5 numbers short. So he's trying to get Grant to remember them and fretting his mum to make sure that he does it. Grant is quite ingenious, and he gets a little bit of metal out of the laptop that he's using and makes a knife out of it. So when Sir Conran returns, he stabs him with it. Sir Conran slumps to the floor, and Grant lifts up his shirt to see all the scarring on his stomach. Sir Conran was Mr. Rabbit. Jessica refuses to hand over the manuscript to Wilson Wilson, and all of a sudden the lift behind him goes ping. Wilson Wilson turns round and fires the gun, and out of the lift comes a ducking Grant. Jessica acts quickly and stabs Wilson Wilson, and he slumps to the floor, and she goes to see a crouching Grant to see if he's okay. She shows him the picture that she has of Sir Conran, and Grant says that he's dead, and so she gives him a hug. Michael uses his identification to gain entry to the warehouse. He's going to turn off all the security. However, they're waiting for him, and they also catch the others outside who are waiting in the van. The group are tied and gagged and held prisoner by gunpoint. All of a sudden they hear footsteps coming down the corridor. It's Milner. However, she shoots the guard. She's there to save them. So they continue to head to the warehouse and set ablaze all the Russian flu vaccine. The next day, nobody comes after them, and Milner has told them it will take her at least a month to mop up all the rest. During this time, Michael and Alice have developed a father-daughter relationship, and so she decides to go and live with him. Ian and Becky decide to head to Scotland till this is all over, and they take Grant as well till he can return home. However, before they go on their separate ways, they tell Jessica that she must take the manuscript to Milner. So this is what Jessica does, and while she's waiting in Milner's office for her to return, her instincts start to kick in and she thinks about things a little bit more. She is desperately trying to visualise the picture of the committee, and all of a sudden she sees a young Milner's face. Jessica escapes to the rooftop and sets alight the manuscript. Milner arrives and explains that Sir Conran was so dedicated to the cause that he carved the markings into his stomach himself. Jessica asks her why did she help burn down the warehouse, and Milner says because they weren't sure whether they'd actually got the vaccine right or not. Jessica tells Milner that she's too late, she's burned the manuscript, that Janus has gone. However, Milner replies that she never really wanted the manuscript. She just knew that that would bring Jessica to her. Milner shoots her in the leg, and Jessica slumps to the ground. Milner walks over to her and presses her finger into a wound and then holds up her blood and says, Carvel thought that she was his greatest creation, and so he hid Janus inside Jessica.